Okay, the question has come up as part of our office hours, but also a couple students have also sent emails on this. What is the reasoning behind reusing pieces of code, or if we have something in the text, to copy that over and to allow a student in order to use that inside of a submission? Well, the reason for that is kind of the whole strength of a language such as R or Python or Spark, any of these modern data science languages which we use, is that you do not have to go back and rewrite the code every single time that you want to make a change to something, or you have a new use case, a new requirement. The strength of this is there's a whole series of libraries. There's existing models that are out there. There's people that have solved the exact same problem of what you're trying to solve. So you should be able to leverage that. And that's really what the goal of the course is, that walking away, not only do you know how the language works and how to code in the language, but you're also able to kind of leverage things that have already been built. So that's why we also allow things like using of libraries instead of manually having to write things out yourself. But if you do use something, we want to have the academic rigor in order to, quote where you took it from, as well as kind of explain what's happening inside of it. So to give you kind of an example of how this kind of works, let's talk about sorts, okay? So for sorts, there are many different ways that you could solve a sorting question. If I asked you to do a sorting question, and probably the version of writing it out by hand would only be used in the case of maybe a coding interview for a job. That would be about it. For the most case, if you're going to do a sort, you're going to use one of the existing libraries, one of the existing techniques. And in order to find out kind of how to do that, sure, you're going to learn how to do that in school, but also you're going to find multiple examples out on Stack Overflow, for example. R documentation. There's things that are built into the R language in order to help you do a sort. So let's just say that your assignment was to do a sort, to produce a sort. There's probably 4 different ways that most students would use in order to do this. So the first one I'm going to show you here is that's simply using the order function. So from within base R itself, we're going to use the mtcars dataset, which is one of the built-in datasets. So simply by using the function of order and then telling it what field in order to order it off of, it will automatically do that sort for you. So in this case here, I'm going to attach cars and I'm going to go ahead and run the order test. And in order test, I'm going to simply call mtcars. I'm going to tell it to sort based off of the order. So we do that, and if we look down here in the console, you can see that it sorts on the miles per gallon. Done. Second way that you could do that is using a built-in function called sort. So let's say, again, we still got mtcars attached, so we don't have to do like mtcars $mpg. If you just run the sort command, now we'll look at sort test. And likewise, it's going to sort. Now with sort, it's only going to sort that particular field, so I'm just saving just out that particular field. So that's one kind of small difference between the two. But if you were just simply asked to do a sort on the miles per gallon, that would give you an ordered miles per gallon coming out of it. Third way, now this one is probably the most common way to do sorts, is using the dplyr package. We're going to get into dplyr a little bit later in the course, so we're going to actually use that in one of the questions, one of the week's assignments. But for this, I'm going to go ahead and use the library of dplyr, and then the command underneath dplyr is arrange. And so if I arrange mtcars by mpg, this gives you a dplyr sort. And now if I look at it here, we can see that it's sorted again by miles per gallon. Incidentally enough, the cheat sheets are also available right here. So this is another little trick about RStudio. If you're interested in kind of the dplyr package and all the details that go along with it, if you just go up here to the help and you go down to the cheat sheets and you click on the dplyr, which is the first one, the second one right here, beyond the IDE one that's there, that gives you all of the parameters and things that you can do with dplyr. I use that kind of extensively whenever I forget a command in dplyr, ggplot, the markdown cheat sheets are all there. So there's a whole lot of goodness just in some of these cheat sheets right here. So in your spare time, I would say kind of explore those, because as you start to use some of these packages, that's going to be very helpful to you. Now, probably the fourth and least used of all of these would be to do like a manual sort code, like to write it out manually. And in this case here, I'm just going to show you what a bubble sort looks like. And for this use case, actually, instead of me just manually writing this out myself, I actually just did a quick search on the internet, found a good bubble sort on Stack Overflow. And so when I say that you need to kind of cite your source, if you took it from the text or if you take it from the online, so I'm just going to make a note here saying that, hey, I took this particular piece of code from Stack Overflow and gave the link to where I'm taking it. That's going to be good enough as far as citing your work to let people know that, yeah, that's where you took this from. But then you can also see how I've kind of gone down and explained what's happening in each of these steps. So the first thing we do is we're going to create a sample. We're going to create a sample from 1 to 100 by tens. We're then going to turn around and make a wrapper function. We're going to make a function. We're going to call the function example. First step in the function is determine the total length of it. That's going to be used in a series of nested for next loops. So there's an outer loop and there's an inner loop, or an external loop and internal loop. And so from here, we're going to basically do a for next loop to iterate through the whole sample. And then within the sample, we want to continuously check to see if one element is greater than the other. So it's basically going to determine if the element you're sitting on, it's going to look at the very next element and saying, hey, is that greater or is that less? It's then going to do the swap. And then to do that swap, what it's going to do is it's going to say yes. If that is the case, then let's store that in a temporary variable. Take the first element, make it equal to the second element, so that's just made the first swap, and then take the second element and equal it to the temp variable. So it's just doing a simple swap or exchange of those two variables. So it has to iterate through the entire string, the entire set of numbers, the 100 that you're looking at, but then within those 100, it's going to go through and it's going to continuously be looking for what's the next, what's the next, what's the next. So over a series of iterations, it'll eventually slowly start to sort the entire series out. We're going to then turn around and run a function call to test it out. So here's where you make the function call where it actually ran the sort. We look at the original value, and then we look at the sorted value. And then as a cleanup step in my script here, I'm just going to go ahead and detach empty cars. So if I run this, we can see here's the original string, here's the sorted string. So now we know, yes, that it works. So hopefully this kind of clears it up. The reason why we're doing this is, again, it contributes to your learning, because at the end, the goal is for the course is that you're able to use the language in order to do real-world problems, to actually use the language, not necessarily that you can write a bubble sort. Because part of the language, part of any of these languages which I've discussed, the strength of them is that these things have already been wrote for you, so you don't have to constantly keep rewriting them every time you have a new use case on it. So hopefully that makes sense. If you still have any questions out of that, please join us for office hours or send me an email, drop a note out in the help desk forum as well. Have a good day.